Hello, a very warm good evening to all of you and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. Now, we have been conducting a series of lectures regarding every subject that is possible for prelims perspective. Now, as far as the subject of environment and ecology goes, we have already looked at three important lectures whereby we have covered certain important aspects, be it of static or be it of dynamic portion. And through the various types of questions, we have actually seen the type of questions that can be expected by the candidates during the examination itself. But also, we have taken a look at all the different conceptual implications that any topic can hold from the exam perspective. Now, in the same tempo and with the same logic and the same ideal, today we are going to look at few of the important aspects regarding protected species as well as the protected areas which are present in our country. Now, this is rather one of the most tedious aspects for the whole subject. Why do I say so? Because this is one of those areas which are packed with so much of data and it keeps on getting updated so regularly that it is very difficult for a candidate to keep track of all the developments that are taking place in this whole field. So what we shall be trying to do through this lecture is, we shall be trying to address few of the important developments from the current affairs perspective with the viewpoint of questions. And from each question, we shall try and extrapolate and rather extract as much information as we can, but still, we shall try and attempt the question with the basic idea that we do not know anything. And then how do we attempt the question? Because again, as I keep on reiterating, UPSC is very unpredictable. Regardless of how many topics you cover, eventually you are guaranteed to find something new, be it in form of a new question, be it in form of a new option that is there. So we need to be at our sharpest best in order to actually logically think through any kind of question, any kind of problem that has been posed before us. Okay? So with that approach, let us begin, and without further ado, let us delve into the basic ideals of protected species and protected areas across the country. Now, before starting the class, I'll make one thing again very clear. The PPTs that are being used, that is being provided to you, you can download it, and in the final 2 slides of the PPT, you will rather find some of the important national parks across the country, which are important from exam perspective. They have been listed state-wise, so that you have a sort of ease when you go in for revision aspect of these national parks, so that you can get them in a consolidated area in a shorter format. Okay? So, let us begin first of all by Operation Clean Art. Now, this was a program, or rather, this was an overarching operation which was launched by WCCB, or Wildlife Crime Control Bureau. Now, why is this important? Because this program was launched overall in order to keep track and in order to curb the smuggling of mongoose and mongoose hair, to be specific. Why is mongoose hair so important? Because the hair extracted from the mongoose body, that is increasingly used across the world in order to manufacture very fine grade of brushes which are used for paintings and other activities. So that is why it had been noted for a considerable period of time that the smuggling, when it came to mongoose, the whole animal as well as the animal parts, that smuggling was on the rise. So in order to keep hold of it and in order to curb it down, the WCCB launched the Operation Clean Art. Now in this aspect, what are the things that we need to know from prelims point of view? First thing, what is Operation Clean Art about? So that is very self-explanatory. Then, second aspect we need to know is about WCCB. What is WCCB? And if you remember, we discussed in the first class itself, it is very important and rather very pertinent for us to know which body is statutory, which body is legal, which is not statutory. So WCCB rather comes under a statutory body or is a type of statutory body. Okay? Keep that in mind. And then another aspect is it comes under the overarching purview of MOEFCC or Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change that is there. So you need to know which ministry or under the aegis of which ministry has this program been launched, what is this program about, and what is the status of mongoose. So if you talk about mongoose particularly, then as far as IUCN is concerned, IUCN does not think that mongoose is somewhat threatened or vulnerable in its wild format. But then, as per our own environmental law, and this environmental law is the most important for the whole of the paper, that is Wildlife Protection Act 1972. As per this law, mongoose has actually been placed under Section 2. Even in Section 2, all the animals that are placed under Section 2, they also receive utmost degree of protection. So that is why mongoose is protected under the WPA or Wildlife Protection Act in 1972. Okay? So these are the basic things that you need to know. These are the basic ideas you should have regarding Operation Clean Art. As we move further, we shall further get to know more and more about WPA 1972 that is there. Okay? Most of the species that are conserved in our country, they are conserved due to this act or under the different provisions that are mentioned in this act. This act overall has got around 6 different categories or 6 different sections that are there. Okay? Out of that, those species or those animals, be it flora, be it fauna, whatever they are, if they are mentioned under Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 of WPA, that means there is immediate ban on any form of smuggling, any form of poaching, any form of hunting that is there. Rest of the schedules are much more relaxed in a manner, so to say. Schedule 5 and Schedule 6 of this act are again important. Why? Because under Schedule 5 of this act, a special category of animals are dealt with, and those animals are referred to as vermins. Right? So, what are vermins? Vermins are basically those kind of animals which can be hunted because, frankly speaking, they serve as a nuisance, be it in the human ecological environment, cultural landscape, or be it in the farming community that is there. So, because they are a nuisance, that is why it is those animals which are listed as vermins, they are free to be hunted down. But again, declaration of vermin is not something which happens overnight. There has to be an application which has to be sent to the central government, and after the acceptability by the central government, only then a particular animal is actually put under the category of vermins. Now, there is another schedule which is very important in Wildlife Protection Act. And that schedule is actually schedule number 6. What is this schedule 6 about? So here comes the catch. And from here, you can actually expect different types of questions. Because under schedule 6, you find certain plant species which are there, which are very important, which are rather very specific from the point of conservation. those important species of the flora, they are included under Schedule 6 of WPA 1972. So that is why if you face any question which tells you that it is only the Wildlife Protection Act rather deals with only fauna, immediately you need to understand that that is incorrect, because Schedule 6 also deals with plant species. Okay, so that is why Schedule 5 and Schedule 6 is important from prelims perspective. From conservation perspective, Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 of Wildlife Protection Act is very, very important. Okay, then after that we come to the Great Indian Bustard, one of the largest birds that you come across in the subcontinent. Now this bird is critically endangered, and it is endemic to few states and rather few regions of the subcontinent. When I mention the word endemic, and this is a word which you will find mentioned here and there in the whole of the syllabus, endemic means that a particular species of flora or fauna is actually based in that particular area only. So if I say a particular species is endemic to Western Ghats, that means that that particular species, be it X, Y or Z, can be found in the Western Ghats only. So that is what endemic sort of signifies in a layman's term, that where the particular species belongs from. Where does that species come from? So in the case of Great Indian Bustard, this Great Indian Bustard is actually endemic to the northwestern or rather western part of India and Pakistan. So in both the areas of India and Pakistan, you will end up finding this Great Indian Bustard that is there. Okay? Now, even in India, you will find that there are certain areas which have specially been allocated for bustard conservation. Now, how do you end up remembering the areas? Or is there any logic to it that which areas are suitable for bustard conservation? So basically, just understand what the species is about. This is a large bird that is there. And large birds, oftentimes across the wild, anywhere in the world, they need open space to roam around or open space to operate, so as to say. So that is why these kind of birds, geographically speaking, will be found in those areas which have either scrub or thorny forest. So wherever you have a habitat which is inclusive of a scrub, open forest or a thorny forest that is there, that can be a suitable habitat for Great Indian Bustard. Now, what can we derive about the rainfall pattern in these? So, these areas typically end up receiving around 50 centimeter to 70 centimeter of rainfall. Why do we need this? Or why am I even telling you or bothering you with this data about rainfall? So that if you know which areas of our country receive this much amount of rainfall, you can automatically deduce or reach at the answer regarding the areas where Great Indian Bustard can be conserved or those areas where they are found in greater numbers. Okay, let's take a look at the type of question which can be framed from here. So, with reference to the Great Indian Bustard, which of the following statements is or are correct? First, it has been classified as critically endangered species as per the IUCN's red list. Absolutely correct. Second, it is endemic to India only. What did we discuss earlier? That it is endemic to both India and Pakistan. So this statement will be incorrect. Then, to protect this species, Project Great Indian Bustard was launched by the Ministry of Environment. Now this is rather a catchy sentence that is there. Many of you might know it, many of you might not know it. So the answer to this is that this was a program which was launched, that is true. But it was launched by Government of Rajasthan. It was not launched by the central government. So that is why this statement will be incorrect. Now, if you have the idea of 3 statements, reaching at the answer will be very easy, that is there. But let us look at the 4th statement that is there. In India, the Great Indian Bustard can be found only in Rolapadu Wildlife Sanctuary, that is there. So that is, as we have seen earlier, it is found in different places across India. So this will be an incorrect statement as well. So that will leave you with A, that is 1 only. Now, suppose you did not know the 3rd statement, but you knew about the 2nd statement and the 4th statement. So by that logic as well, you have the ability, or you can actually reach the answer. So try to sharpen these skills, because those will matter much more at the time of examination than sheer rote learning of facts that are out there. Okay? Then, after that, we move on to another sort of mythical species that is there, and that is the snow leopard. Now, snow leopard is a very important species when it comes to high altitudinal habitat, or if we say in layman's term, of a mountainous ecosystem. So in those areas, snow leopard actually forms the top predator. So that is why the health of the whole ecosystem, health of the whole biodiversity is in fact pinned to the snow leopard. Where is it found? So it is found in the regions, and rather the high altitude regions of Central Asia as well as South Asia. So in case of India, it is rather found in all the different frontier states and union territories of the country which are actually having a mountainous landscape. So that is why snow leopard is important. Why? First of all, because it needs to be conserved. It is a sort of a flagship species, so to say. Second, its actual numbers in the wild is still not very much known. So conservation efforts do not have to be lackluster, so to say. So that is why snow leopard will always remain pertinent and important from prelims perspective. Okay, so you can easily expect a type of question from snow leopard also, and that will chiefly be revolving around the area where they are found as well as their present status. So rather than the misconceived notion that all of us have that these sort of animals will always be critically endangered, snow leopard is rather one of those species whose status has been rather upgraded from endangered to vulnerable. Okay, so keep that in mind. It has been changed from endangered to vulnerable. Why? Because, as I said, their exact numbers are still not known. Because actually scouring those high mountainous landscapes is not an easy task for anybody out there. So it was still estimated that their numbers in the wild, given the vast areas that they can roam through, their numbers in the wild would still be minimum of more than 4,000, which puts them in the category of vulnerable species. Okay, so this is important from snow leopard perspective. Then we move on to another important species, but this time a flora that is there. That is Globa Andersoni. Now, why is Globa Andersoni important? That is because for a long time, roughly around 140 years, it had been thought that this species of plant has actually become extinct. It was first of all recorded in India by different biologists who were Britishers actually. So they came and made a record of all these different plants. And since that time, for a long period of time, there was no further recording, there was no further mapping of this plant which was available until very recently, whereby it has again been found in the region of Teesta River Valley. Now, what is it important from this plant that can be asked from UPSC or prelims perspective? First thing, this is a special type of a plant which is referred to as a lithophyte. Okay? This is a kind of a lithophyte. What is a lithophyte? Lithophytes are those categories of plants which can grow very well even on bare rocks. So they tend to grow typically on bare exposed rocks, very much close to a waterfall that is there, or very much close to a stream of river that is flowing by. So in those areas, you will find Globa Andersoni to grow. But then still, it does not grow typically in all and across all the rocks that are there. It is found specifically in the region of Teesta River Valley. So it is a lithophyte. What do we know regarding the successional tendencies when it comes to a lithophyte? Lithophytes are generally referred to as the primary successors. Right? Primary successors. That is, these are those kind of species which inhabit any particular geographical area initially, or first of all, it is these species which will have their presence felt in that area, and then the secondary wave of species will come, or another type of species will come and will populate the area again. Okay, so keep in mind, it is a lithophyte. It grows well close to the water bodies that are there on barren rocks. Because UPSC previously has been known to ask these sort of questions, that where does this plant species grow, or where does this animal, or where is this animal actually found? So be very clear regarding those aspects that are there. Okay, then a sort of question from floral community, that is Pongabia Pinata that is there, which is a leguminous tree, has been in the news recently for which of the following reasons? So, Pongabia Pinata, again important from this year's perspective. First, its seeds are used to formulate vaccines for malaria. No. Then, being a potential source for the production of biodiesel. This is rather a correct statement. Okay, so this is an important plant for multiple reasons. First, as you can see here itself, it is a leguminous tree. Now, what is the benefit that you have from a leguminous tree? It helps in attaching nitrogen on the soil surface. So in a way, it is kind of a nitrogen fertilizer that you can provide to the ground in the most natural way that is possible. Then secondly, this has a potential source to be utilized for extraction of biofuel. Now, there are different plant sources which are available for biofuel. Why this in news? That is because of the short growing season it has and the actual density of the canopy, which provides greater degree of extraction possibility which can be framed out of this tree. So that is why this tree is important for nitrogen fixation, for its quick growth time, for its larger canopy, and all of them in a way help in adding or in extraction of biofuel when it comes to the leaves of these trees. Okay? Then, after that, we come to the species of purple frog. Now, purple frog, why is it in news? That is because purple frog is on its way to be named as the state amphibian of Kerala, or official state amphibian of Kerala. Now, purple frog is kind of a very mysterious creature. Why? Because of two important factors. First, that it is oftentimes referred to as a living fossil which might have shared the space with dinosaurs. So, studying this frog in detail and the anatomy of this frog will shed some light regarding how the evolutionary cycle has spanned across for millions of years. Any species, mind you, which has inhabited the earth for more than 70 to 80 million years, that species must have shown different types of adaptation techniques. And studying that will help us understand natural evolution in a much better way. So that is why purple frog and the study of purple frog is very important. But then I said two reasons. The second reason is that unlike any frog, the body structure of this species is sort of different, because this species, unlike other frogs, they do not rely on their hind legs or their rear legs. The normal frogs that you come across, they oftentimes jump and hop from different places, right? Now, in those scenarios, their hind legs or rear legs are very strong. But in this case, the rear legs are very weak. Instead, the front legs or the forelegs are stronger. So what is that used for? That is used for digging purposes. So this is a rare kind of frog which actually entails digging process in order to establish its perfect habitat. And due to this reason or due to this body structure, this kind of frog has specialized in living underground. It only comes over ground for a few days in order to mate and in order to reproduce. But other than that, it does stay underground. So that is why its nose as well as its front legs are specially made and adapted for the purpose of living and burrowing underground. So these characteristics and aspects of purple frog is something you need to understand. Okay? Then, after that, we have red panda. Look at the type of question that can be framed here. This is a passage type of question which UPSC has been asking since 2018 onwards. It has actually given increased focus on these type of passage questions. So this passage question, what you have to beware of, do not reach your conclusion very early, because it might be absolutely possible that the key to your answer is hidden in the last line. So do not relax upon immediately reading one line and knowing that this is going to be the answer that is there. Okay? So the species is endemic to the temperate forests of the Himalayas. Okay? Temperate forests of the Himalayas. And it ranges from the foothills of western Nepal to China in the east. It is also the state animal of Sikkim. So here lies the first clue to your answer. State animal of Sikkim. This species was included as critically endangered species in the Center's recovery program. Which of these species is being talked about? Now, let us look at the different options that are there. First option, hoolock gibbon. Now, hoolock gibbon is not endemic to the temperate forest of Himalayas. It can rather be found in the Western Ghats. So immediately this is incorrect, because look at it here. Here Himalayas is mentioned very clearly and very explicitly. Then second we have Fairey's leaf monkey. Now you can also think about this, but if you knew that this is rather the state animal of Tripura, so that means the state animal of Sikkim that is given here, it will make it incorrect. Then you have red panda and the Indian rhinoceros. So the answer here will be red panda. Okay? So try to eliminate as much options as you can. That will increase your probability. But when you are going through this question, here you can extract many things from this question itself. First of all, regarding its habitat. Secondly, regarding its endangered status. And thirdly, regarding it is the state animal of which state that is there. And also you get an idea regarding another species that is there. So after going through this question, please do not go through the details of red panda that is there. That will very politely and modestly be a waste of your time, because in examination you will not find any question which delves so deep into any particular species that is there. Okay? Then consider the following statements regarding Singchung Bugun Reserve recently seen in the news. The first is, the reserve conserves the critically endangered bird, that is Bugun Leochitla. Now, this is a correct statement. Why? Because the local tribal community of this area, they were the ones who actually came together to conserve this species, and thereafter the conservation efforts, it really expanded in the form of a whole reserve that is there. So first statement will be right. And where is it? It is in Arunachal Pradesh. Then it is a part of Nokrek Biosphere Reserve. This is incorrect. Nokrek is not there in Arunachal Pradesh. Then the reserve is home to red pandas and clouded leopards. So again, this will be a right statement. So you have C, that is 1 and 3, which is correct. Okay. So in this question, you can actually know which reserve it is there in Arunachal Pradesh. Also, the Bugun tribe is important because it was the Bugun tribe which initiated the whole conservation effort, so to say, and thereby also you need to know that Nokrek is not there in Arunachal. Okay? Then, after that, we come to IUCN, or International Union for Conservation of Nature. Now, this is a body which was from its very initial days, since 1948 in itself. This body or this organization was actually involved in conservation efforts for different organisms, be it wildlife or be it the floral species. So, since that point of time, this organization has been working incessantly, or rather continuously, in order to raise awareness programs and also in order to help, or rather in order to guide the different governments to take steps regarding conservation. It was in 1964 that they came out with sort of a detailed list of animals which were endangered or the animals which were on the verge of extinction. So since 1964, they have continuously been coming out with different data pointers in order to goad or coax the government organizations into decision making, as well as in order to involve NGOs and different civil society organizations to work towards conservation effort for wildlife and natural flora and fauna that is there. Okay? So, in this, basically, you have the different species being categorized on the basis of how much their population number is in the wild or what is their status in the nature itself. So as you can see on the screen, the data varies from not evaluated on one end to extinct on the other end. Near extinct, you will find another very interesting classification, that is extinct in the wild. So even though there are many species which are not really present outside in any sort of forested environment or in any sort of biohabitat that is there, but there are still certain species which are kept under captivity, which are kept under captive breeding. So those will be the ones which shall be categorized as extinct in the wild. Other than that, you have three major classifications regarding the threatened status that is there. So those are critically endangered, endangered, and vulnerable. So you need to know that when it is that a particular animal, a particular species is classified as critically endangered, when it will be classified as endangered, and when it will be classified as vulnerable. Okay, so critically endangered is when the population decline of around 80 to more than 90%, which has taken place in the previous 10 years or 3 generations of that particular animal, whichever cycle is longer. So only then a species is actually classified as critically endangered. Case in point, take the example of vultures. So in case of vultures, from the 90s, in almost a decade and a half, few of the species of vultures, they have declined by more than 95%. So again, that will put them under the category of critically endangered. Slightly lesser degree of threat that is there, that is, those species are categorized as endangered. So in case of endangered species, you need to have a criteria whereby the population has reduced by almost 50 to 70% in these 10 years or within the 3 generations that are there. Also, you will find here one condition that is mentioned regarding the population size. That is, in case of critically endangered, population size of fewer than 50 individuals need to be there. In case of endangered, population size of fewer than 250 individuals or the different factors regarding population fall has to be met. That is why snow leopard was actually moved from endangered to vulnerable, because their numbers were found to be quite larger than initially estimated. Okay, then you have the vulnerable category, in which again a population decline of around 30 to around 50% of population decline, if it has been observed, it is put under vulnerable category. Okay, so this is a particular area where many of us, we spend many long fruitless hours studying and learning this. So in order to better remember this, just remember around 80 to 90 in the first case, then population decrease by 50 to 70 in the second case, and 30 to 50 in the third case. That is a categorization for being in the critically endangered, endangered, or in the vulnerable category. Just remember these numbers. These numbers are easier to remember because they form a sort of progression that is there. So that is something you can always remember. Okay? Now, in India, the different species which are critically endangered, the list is quite long that is there. But then you do not need to remember that list time and time again, because not all of that is very important. So few of them are rather important, and one of that is Elvira rat. Now Elvira rat, where is it found? It is found in Tamil Nadu. Okay, which region of Tamil Nadu? The Eastern Ghat section. Eastern Ghat section of Tamil Nadu is where you will end up finding large rock rat or Elvira rat. So as the name suggests, this is a kind of, again, a species which feels very much at home in its natural habitat in rocky surfaces. In rocky subterranean surfaces, they are actually those species which tend to thrive. Okay? Then you have the Namdafa flying squirrel, Malabar civet, few rhinos, shark species that are there, and also tortoise species or turtle species. Now in this, sharks are rather important. Why? Because of the different discoveries that have been made this year regarding the eating habits of these sharks, and also it was actually deciphered why these sharks are hunted even though they are not harmful to humans. That is because of the structure of their teeth that is there. So, and also one another fact, these sharks that you see, they have a specialization to actually see through certain murky waters as well, or disturbed waters, so to say, which is different from the larger subspecies of shark. Okay, so that is why Pondicherry shark was rather in news this time. So again, I will say that do not spend too much time remembering all of these. You have many bird species as well, like you have the Yarden courser, then you have the sociable lapwing, then you have Himalayan quail, which is rather thought to be extinct, that is there. But still, these are not the areas that UPSC is going to ask you question about. At max, it will ask you question regarding in which area they are found. So as the name of it goes, in each of these names, you can actually come out with where they are found. For example, Malabar civet, it will be found in the region of Malabar, that is there. So Kerala will be one of the places where they can be found. Then Namdapha flying squirrel, it will be found in Namdapha National Park, that is there. So that is why you can easily conclude where it is found. Okay? Then recent changes which have occurred to IUCN. This portion is important. So here you will see that a list of species exist whose status has been changed from critically endangered to either endangered or vulnerable status. That is, their numbers in the wild has increased considerably. And in that, pygmy hawk is rather important. Why? Because even though different conservation methodologies were used in order to protect all the species, but pygmy hawk was one where scientific study was done regarding the dietary habits, regarding the reproducing patterns, regarding the colonizing patterns of these animals, and thereby only after that their numbers actually increased. So that is why pygmy hawk is important this time. So you need to know that they have been changed, or their status has been changed to endangered. Okay, this, in fact, these list of species: Kondana rat, again found in the Western Ghats, then forest owlet, then gecko, leatherback turtle, and knife-toothed sawfish. These species are important. You just need to know about their status change that is there. Okay, nothing more than that is required from exam perspective. Then the IUCN, the report that it generates, it is actually written out, or it is actually represented in different colored pages in order to show the importance of these species, or in order to rather symbolize what that colored page means. So take a look at the type of question which can be framed from here. With reference to the red data book, consider the following statements. First, pink pages are used for those species that were formerly endangered but now have recovered to a point where they are no longer threatened. Pink pages. So this will be an incorrect statement. Why? Because pink pages are actually used to represent those kind of species which are critically endangered. They are critically endangered. Now, what about those species which were formerly endangered but now they are less threatened? For them, green pages are used. So, green pages for those species who have recovered, pink pages for critically endangered species. So, first statement in itself will be wrong. Then, red list is inclusive of all the aquatic and terrestrial flora and fauna but leaves out viruses, fungi and bacteria. So again, this is a very twisty statement that is there where many of the students they commit mistake, because we are unable to actually appreciate that IUCN also comes out with a list regarding the different types of fungi that are there. So there are in fact 15 different fungal species or 15 different species of fungi which are critically endangered. So fungi are also listed under IUCN. Remember that. So that makes this statement incorrect as well. Then, due to a continuously shrinking habitat, snow leopards have been moved from vulnerable status to an endangered status. So what the reality actually is? Because of their increased numbers or number which is more than earlier perceived or earlier calculated, they have been moved from endangered to vulnerable rather than the opposite. So again, this statement will also be incorrect, leaving D, that is none of the above, as the appropriate answer for the same. Okay? Then, after that, we come to the Jatayu Conservation Program. This is a conservation program which has recently been launched by the government of Uttar Pradesh, that is there. Now, Jatayu is a mythical bird as far as our Hindu religion goes. So that is why Jatayu Conservation Program is the name which has been allotted to vulture conservation or conservation of vultures in the wild. Now, when it comes to vultures, these are the actually endangered vultures which are present in India. Now, vultures for a long period of time, and I gave you the example as well, in the 90s and the 2000s, early 2000s, their population has decreased very significantly and quite drastically. And in certain subspecies, their population has decreased by the amount of close to around 96.7%. So imagine the threat that this species is under. So why is it that these species or their numbers have been declining? The obvious reason, first of all, is the destruction of their natural habitats, which is again an open area, so to say. Then you have more urban encroachment in different areas, restricting the land available for these vultures. But then, one of the rather most important influences when it comes to the decrease in their numbers has been the use of diclofenac. Diclofenac is rather one of the non-inflammatory drugs which is put in different animals and which has been used by different veterinary doctors across our country for a long period of time, that is there, in order to treat certain diseases and in order to get the livestock produce more. So, due to these applied reasons, diclofenac has been widely used across all different animals. Now, when these animals die, vultures ingest the leftover material or the carcass of those animals, and in a way, they end up ingesting diclofenac as well, which is rather a primary source for decline in their population. What happens to vultures when they consume diclofenac? Immediately, they go through a process which is referred to as neck drooping. That is, the long and slender neck that you see of the vulture, that droops. So then it no longer has the strength to actually take flight or move from one area to another, let alone feed itself, leading to ultimately the demise of these vultures. So that is why now that diclofenac has been banned, you have the population of vultures resurging in certain areas of the country. Now, instead of diclofenac, there is another medicine which has been prescribed which is not so harmful, or which is rather not harmful for the vultures. So that is also something you need to know, and that is meloxicam. Okay, instead of diclofenac, now you have the increased use of meloxicam, which is not harmful for vulture. Now, why is it so important to conserve vulture in the wild? So, there are multiple reasons for it. The first reason being that vultures and their metabolism, it acts as the end point for different pathogens which are present in different animals. So vultures feed on the dead, right? Now, different pathogens might be present in the animals that the vultures are feeding upon. So after the vultures finish whatever is left of, those pathogens eventually die within their system or within the system of the vultures themselves. If that does not happen, then there is always a risk of these different and these infectious microorganisms actually penetrating the food chain of larger animals and also in a way affecting us as well. So that is why vulture is very important in a way that it feeds on the sarcophagus of different animals and is an endpoint of the food chain. Then, the second importance that you can garner regarding vultures is that in our country, where typically we actually feel that different animals are very sort of to be worshipped or very pious to us. So those different animals, when they die, we do not simply kill it and we simply do not dispose it away. So also from an Indian cultural perspective, vulture is important as the last member of the food chain which takes care of the dead and decomposing sarcophagus of any dead animal that is there. So that is why preservation of vulture is very important for our ecosystem. There are different areas which have rather been established for the preservation purposes, different larger areas that are there. One such area is in the region of Uttar Pradesh, very close to the Tarai belt. So from the region of Lakhimpur Kheri in itself to Katarnia Ghat, all those regions in the northern part of Uttar Pradesh, that has been sought to be the area under or to be kept under vulture conservation program. Then second area is in the region of Assam Plains. So these areas are being developed gradually so that an overarching view can be taken and it can be controlled and monitored which particular species is dying and why is it that vulture population is increasing or decreasing. Okay, so then we come to the concept of protected areas as a whole. So what is this concept of protected areas? Protected areas, in a way, as the name itself suggests, have been built or are being built in order to protect the flora and fauna and in their own natural landscape. It is not like a zoo that you get, even though zoo will also come under the category of protected area, but rather most of the protected areas that you will see, they are built in such a way that an in situ conservation of wildlife can take place, whereby there is no need to displace a particular animal to any different area. So protected areas can again be subdivided into different types depending upon the utility and depending upon why they have been established. So you can have national parks, then you can have wildlife sanctuaries, then you can have tiger reserves, then after that you can have biosphere reserves, then you can actually have community reserves that are there, which again in a way encourages or inculcates the idea of community protection and community participation in the whole process of protection. And that makes it much more representative and much more fruitful from the endpoint view. So, different types of protected areas exist because of the different reasons why they have been established, also because of their different purposes and the different species that they end up targeting. In almost all these protected areas, you'll come across certain basic characteristics. That is, it will have a core zone and it will have a buffer region as well. So core region that is there, the regulation is at its peak, at its maximum, whereby not even a single step is allowed which can endanger the species which are aimed to be protected. So that will be the core zone. Surrounding area is generally the buffer zone. In case of biosphere reserves, you have another important area which is surrounding this, that is typically the transition zone that is there. Okay? Now, in the case of protected areas, the main issue and the main difficulty that we all face is regarding the difference between national park and wildlife sanctuaries. Even though both of them, they are present in hundreds. National park is close to roughly around more than or close to around 104. Wildlife sanctuaries again more than 500. Tiger reserve is close to around 52. Biosphere reserves are close to around 18 in our country. So what is the basic difference that you can ascribe between a national park and a wildlife sanctuary? So the basic difference that you will come across is, first of all, regarding the degree of protection. So in case of a national park, the degree of protection that is offered is significantly higher. The animals, they are, or all the species of biodiversity, including animals and plants, they are looked upon with utmost carefulness and utmost meticulous attitude. In wildlife sanctuary, the control is slightly somewhat loosened. Not to say that you can undertake poaching and hunting activities, not to say that, but still the regulations are slightly relaxed. But when it comes to the core zone of it, it is as stringent as any. But if you take an overarching view, then national parks are much more stringent. Secondly, here in case of national park, no human activity or no anthropogenic influence is allowed at all. Be it for livestock grazing purposes or be it for any other purposes to extract any, let's say, timber produce or any forest produce that is there, in national parks it is not allowed. National park means total protection, utmost degree of protection that can be provided. In case of wildlife sanctuaries, as I said, they are much more relaxed in the terms of their regulations. So in case of wildlife sanctuaries, local communities, they are allowed to undertake certain activities, be it lumbering in the vicinity, that is in the outer areas. Or when I say lumbering, I mean collecting wood, or be it collecting some other kind of forest produces in a non-invasive way. And those activities can be undertaken in the fringe areas of wildlife sanctuary, but absolutely not in case of national parks. Then you have another difference, and that is regarding the purpose why they are being established. So many of the times when there is a particular species which is threatened, in their endemic zone, in their endemic region, the government of the day, it establishes a wildlife sanctuary. So that is why it is oftentimes a species specific. Oftentimes it is targeted at conservation of a particular species. Whereas in case of national parks, it is not created for any particular species, but rather it is created for conservation of the whole of the biodiversity, not restricted to any particular species. So these three differences, remember them. And just remember about the degree of protection, which is maximum in case of national park. That shall suffice. And mind you, this is an area where UPSC is expected to ask a question this year regarding the conditionalities that you have with regards to national park and wildlife sanctuary, because it has remained in news regarding whether the controls need to be more relaxed, more lenient, or more stringent on terms of national parks. So that is why this difference is very important from this year's perspective. Okay? Then, let us look at the type of question. With reference to the protected area in India, consider the following statements. First, national park is primarily focused on a particular species. What did we see here? Wildlife sanctuary is species specific. National park is not created for any particular species. So immediately you have option 1 as incorrect. Look at the different options that are provided to you. Only one option does not have 1. So that will give you, or that shall give you, the answer automatically anyways. But let us look at the other options. Only the central government can declare an area as a national park. So it might seem to be true, but the reality is that when it comes to being declared as a national park, or let's say a wildlife sanctuary, or let's say a biosphere reserve, state government also has the right to declare an area. Central government also has the right. It is not to say that the central government cannot, but then here the keyword is only. So that will make this statement as incorrect. The third statement. Hunting is totally prohibited in national parks but not in wildlife sanctuaries. So here hunting and actual collection of forest produce is allowed, as we have said, in the vicinity areas of the protected area. So see, you have the core area, you have the area of the vicinity. So in the vicinity area, in the proximal area, you can undertake different activities. Economic activities like beekeeping is also something which many of the tribal population, they do undertake in case of wildlife sanctuary. In the vicinity, in the buffer zone, you can also undertake hunting of certain non-endangered species. So that is something which is still allowed or permissible in the wildlife sanctuaries, but absolutely abhorrent or absolutely prohibited in the case of national parks. So that will give us 3 only as the answer. Then, now, it is the home of Asiatic lions. The Kamleshwar Dam is located in this park. It is the largest deciduous forest in Western India. Which national park is being mentioned here? So here, home of Asiatic lions. So that will be Gir National Park that is there. But then add to the knowledge data regarding the deciduous forest which can be found in the actual areas of the Girnar mountains that are there, Girnar hills. After all, the name is derived from those Girnar hills. So in those Girnar hill region, there is a deciduous forest which is found, and also there is a dam which is present. So a question regarding these aspects can also be framed. Again, here you have to be aware of why the others are totally incorrect. Okay, so Tadoba, that is there. Where is it present? Maharashtra, Kuno Palpur National Park, which we studied for cheetah reintroduction. Again, where is it present? Madhya Pradesh, bordering Rajasthan. So that is why these areas will be incorrect. Okay, so Vansda and Gir can only be your possible confusions. So immediately when home of Asiatic lion comes, you know it is Gir National Park. Okay, then After that, we come across few of the important tiger reserves across the country. So again, the issue is, how do we remember them? How do we actually make sure that we remember all of them? So the answer to that is, you do not have to remember all of them. The moment you start remembering 52 names that are there, immediately you leave scope for lots and lots of errors and recollection mistakes that will happen in the preliminary examination. So what I would rather recommend to you is, always look at it from a region specific point of view. Classify it in different belts. That will help you understand it much better or relate to it much better. So, as we had discussed earlier regarding tigers, there are 4 specific belts in which tigers are found. One is the region of Shivaliks and the Tarai belt. Okay, so look at the different tiger reserves which will be present in the Shivalik and the Tarai belt. Start from the westernmost, that is Rajaji, which you will find in the region of Haridwar and Rishikesh. There you will find Rajaji. Then you will have Corbett. Then you have Pilibhit, Dudhwa and Valmiki in Bihar. Then look at another area which is central India and the eastern Ghats. It is here that there are n number of different tiger reserves, most of them concentrated in the particular Dandakaranya region or Dandakaranya forested area. Why is Dandakaranya famous for? In general, internal security point of view. Dandakaranya is famous for its red corridor regarding the Naxal and the Maoist attacks which keep on happening. So this area is very famous for that. So remember the different names state-wise. Like you have Sanjay Dhubri, very much in Madhya Pradesh on the bordering area of Chhattisgarh. Then you have Achanakmar, Kanha, Pech. All of them, they end up providing a wildlife corridor for different species. Now, in this, what you can do is, there are certain areas like you have Simlipal, like you have Achanakmar, Amarkantak. Okay, these areas, they are also sort of biosphere reserves. So thereby you can complement it by understanding that these are so forested areas that they have population of different animals which are residing in them. For example, Simlipal is very important elephant reserve as well. Is a very important elephant reserve as well. Okay? Then, in the northeastern states, most of the protected areas, they do lie in the state of Assam itself. Few that are left, like you have Dampa in case of Mizoram, western part of Mizoram. Then you have Namdafa in Arunachal Pradesh. Those are important. Namdafa, why is it important? Namdafa is important because here you have all the 4 species of big cat which can be found here. So here you will find snow leopard, clouded leopard, a normal leopard as well as a normal tiger. So it is one of those national parks or tiger reserves where you end up finding all 4 different species of big cats that are there. So that is why Namdafa is going to be very important. Also, it is home to the critically endangered species of Namdafa flying squirrel. Okay, so that is why Namdafa is important. Remember that. Okay, then the Kaziranga, Orang, Manas, that the whole belt that you have, these are tiger infested areas, as well as these are the areas where rhino and elephant population is also on the up. So form such sort of linkages which can help you remember. And as we discussed earlier, Palamu, Buksa and Dampa, they have recorded 0 tiger population. So again, that is something which will help you remember that. Okay? In the southern part, you have typically Amrabad, which is very important. Then you have Bandipur, which is very important. So here again you can divide it into the belt of Western Ghats, as well as here you have the central India and the Eastern Ghats that are there. So that is how state-wise, region-wise, you can very easily end up remembering the different tiger reserves. But if you start remembering it one by one, you will end up spending all the time without much fruit that is there. Okay? Now, Sanjay Dubri National Park is geographically located in the state of. So here you have Madhya Pradesh as the answer, and Sanjay Dubri is actually situated in the bordering area of Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh. So there also you can actually understand, because you might face a question in this category as well. Place these tiger reserves in east to west, west to east, north to south, south to north. Because UPSC is nowadays clinging on to locational aspect of a question, of a particular concept, so you can very easily expect those sorts of questions to be made. So be aware of where a particular kind of tiger reserve is. At least have a spatial awareness that is there. Okay? Then, here you have three statements describing a tiger reserve. And what you have to do is, you have to pinpoint which particular tiger reserve is being talked about. So first, it forms the easternmost limit of the Himalayan Terai region in India. Easternmost limit of the Himalayan Terai belt. Then, the Gandak River forms the western boundary of this tiger reserve. So, and then you have barking deer, sambar and flying squirrels are the important animals of this tiger reserve. So chances are that you can come to your answer with the first two statements itself. Third statement of this category will never help you reach the answer that is there. So always concentrate on the locational aspects that are there. So first is, it forms the easternmost limit of the Himalayan Terai forest in India. Look at the different options. So, Palamu Tiger Reserve. Where is Palamu located in? It is located in Jharkhand. So, how can it be in Himalayan Terai? Absolutely not. Then you have Buxa Tiger Reserve. Buxa in West Bengal you can actually confuse it with the fact that it is maybe the easternmost limit of Terai. But then immediately you have to look at the second statement, that the Gandak River forms the western boundary. Buxa is in West Bengal. Gandak actually meets river Ganga in Bihar itself. So how is it that Buxa can have Gandak as the westernmost boundary? So again, this is incorrect. Then, Pilibhit Tiger Reserve. Where is Pilibhit located? Pilibhit is located rather in the northwestern part of Uttar Pradesh. So that cannot be, or that cannot fulfill either of these statements. So here again you can eliminate, and what you are left with is the Valmiki Tiger Reserve, which is actually the only tiger reserve which is present in the state of Bihar, and it also shares an international boundary with Nepal. Okay, so this is again a type of question regarding which particular national park or tiger reserve shares an international boundary with which particular country. So that can be important from exam perspective as well. Okay, then which of the following are biodiversity hotspots present in India? What are biodiversity hotspots? So, biodiversity hotspot is the terminology which was given earlier by Norman Myers. Norman Myers, in a paper which was written in 1988-89, he came upon the idea about biodiversity hotspots. So, what are those biodiversity hotspots? These are those particular areas which include around 1500 species of vascular plants, or close to around 0.5% of the biodiversity, and whereby close to 75% of the habitat is threatened or has been destroyed. So in those cases, can an area be decided or can be declared as a biodiversity hotspot? So what is a biodiversity hotspot? In a layman's term, biodiversity hotspot can be termed as those areas which indicate a very specific, or rather a very magnificent species diversity which is present, but in the case where maximum area has already been threatened, is threatened, or has been destroyed. So those are the biodiversity hotspots. In case of India, which are the biodiversity hotspots? So here you have the Himalayas, yes, because of the sheer ecosystem and the combination of flora and fauna they represent, Himalayas are a biodiversity hotspot. Then you have Western Ghats because of the equatorial rainforests and evergreen forests that are found there, as well as the different endemism or area specificity of particular plant species and animal species which belong to Western Ghats, that is very high. So that is why Western Ghats is again an area of biodiversity hotspot. Then the same is with Indo-Burma and with the case of Andaman Islands as well. So you have 1, 2, 3 and 4. These are the only 4 major biodiversity hotspot regions in our country. All these 4, you need to know that these are the regions of biodiversity hotspot. Other than these, what are the areas of biodiversity across the world? You have areas like in the case of South America, you have the Amazon basin that is there. Then in case of African continents, you have the island of Madagascar which is there. Then you have Philippines. All these are basically part of biodiversity hotspots. So it is not only important to know these important or these areas in India, but you should have a slight inkling or a slight idea about what such areas are across the world as well. Okay? So who gave the idea about biodiversity hotspot? Norman Myers. Conditionality, it should have close to around 1500 species of vascular plants, okay, which tend to represent around 0.5% of the whole of the species diversity. And also 75% needs to be threatened or already undergoing a process of change. Only then can an area be declared as biodiversity hotspot. Okay? Then protected areas on the international boundaries. So as I said, this is again a very important area, just like protected areas on the banks of different rivers. So with reference to different reserve area that form the international boundary, consider the following pairs, and we have to say which are correctly matched. First, Dampa Tiger Reserve, and here India and Myanmar. So this will be incorrect. Dampa Tiger Reserve, it is true it forms an international boundary, but it does not form a boundary with Myanmar. Rather, it ends up forming a boundary with Bangladesh because it is situated in the western part of Mizoram. So it will end up forming a boundary with Bangladesh. Then you have Valmiki Tiger Reserve, the one we just now studied, that is between India and Nepal. So that is true. Then Manas Tiger Reserve, situated in Assam. So Manas Tiger Reserve is actually having a boundary between India and Bhutan. Then you have Jim Corbett Tiger Reserve, which is situated between India and Nepal as per the statement. So this will again be incorrect. Why? Because Jim Corbett does not form any international boundary with Nepal that is there. So that is why 1 and 4 will be incorrect and 2 and 3 will be correct. Okay, so this is also a perspective or a parameter by which you can learn the different protected areas and the different properties of these protected areas regarding their reach, regarding the international boundary. For example, Manas Tiger Reserve or the Manas National Park sharing its boundary with Bhutan. That was very, very important around 4 to 5 years back, because it was through this national park that smuggling activity was being undertaken by different separatist organizations which did operate in northeastern states. And that is why the army basically launched a program or an operation all out in order to flush everyone from this Manas National Park. So that is why Manas National Park and the international boundary with Bhutan is very important. Then, after that, we come to the concept of Marine National Park. Look at the type of question that can be framed. So, it is the first marine national park of India. Some of the finest coral reef fringe islands are found at Pirotan, Narala, Ajad and Positara. Near this national park, it lies in the intertidal zone between the lowest and highest tide levels and is part of an archipelago. Which of the following protected areas is referred here? So, as the answer itself is given here, it will be A, that is Gulf of Kutch Marine National Park. So, marine national parks, they are also basically established in order to conserve the whole biodiversity around them, including the coastal waters, including the island community, as well as any terrestrial ecosystem, howsoever small, which comes under the purview, that also has to be protected. So other than these four, there is another important marine national park which you need to know, and that is Malwan Marine National Park. Okay, where is it situated? It is situated off the coast of Maharashtra. So Malwan Marine National Park is also an important national park. So there are 5 important protected areas in the marine waters that are there. So you need to know where which is situated so that you have a better idea when it comes to examination. Okay? Then you have bunny grasslands. So consider the following statements regarding the bunny grasslands. Bunny grasslands lie in the northwestern part of Rajasthan. Northwestern part of Rajasthan is close to Haryana border that is there. So that is incorrect. Where is bunny grassland found? It is found in the region of Gujarat. So the first statement in itself is incorrect. Before looking at the other statements, let us quickly look at the options. You have only one option which does not have 1, but we will look at the other statements nonetheless. Okay, so it is sort of a saline arid grassland system that is there, which is true. Then third is, it is not suitable for agriculture but is fertile for certain grasses during the rainy season only. Again, very much a property of grassland ecosystem that is there. So both of them are true. Why is bunny grassland important and why are we discussing it? Bunny grassland is important because of the tribal community which depends upon it. And that tribal community are the Maldharis. Maldharis inhabit the area and they depend on these grassland in order to feed their livestock, in order to keep their livestock up and running. So that is why Maldharis are the ones who exploit these grasslands, or rather use these grasslands to the fullest potential. Now, these Maldharis, they are the ones who live in the area of bunny grassland. Bunny grassland grows in the region of Gujarat. Which national park or which protected area does that indicate to? So that indicates to Gir National Park. So in the region of Gir and in the laps of Girnar Hills, where you have the Asiatic lions in one of their most largest numbers who prevail there in their natural setting. There, Maldhari's community or the Maldhari tribe, it has coexisted in that area for a long period of time. So that is also important for you to know that in the area of Gir, what is the tribal community or which tribal community lives there or thrives there, that is something you need to know. Okay, so that is why Banni grassland has been in news, and you should know which area it is present in and what is its purpose. Its basic purpose is for pastoralist demand or in order to feed the livestock that is there. Okay, then after that we have the topic of biodiversity heritage. So let us look at a type of question that is generated. So consider the following statements. It is an ancient artificial lake which now provides sight of flamingos and pelicans to the tourists. Artificial lake that is there. Okay. Then it is the first water body in the country to be declared as biodiversity heritage site. First water body in the country. So that is important. Whichever is the answer, always remember this point that it is the first water body to be declared as the biodiversity heritage site. It is suitable or it is situated in the state of Telangana. So the answer in this case will be A, that is Aminpur Lake. Okay. Now we had studied in the earlier classes regarding the Neknampur Lake as well. Why was Neknampur Lake famous or why was it in news? Because of floating treatment wetland that had been established there. So that is why Neknampur was in news. Okay. So Aminpur Lake is rather the first water body in the country which has got a biodiversity heritage tag. Which is another area which is very close to a water body which has got that? That is the Majuli Island. Majuli Island. That has also received biodiversity heritage tag. Where is Majuli Island situated? Majuli Island is rather the largest riverine island that you get across the world. It is something which is found within the banks of river Brahmaputra or within the course of the river Brahmaputra itself. And it is a riverine island which at its maximum has a dimension of around 16 kilometers. So that tells you two things. Regarding first of all the amount and the volume of sediments that are carried by the river Brahmaputra. And secondly, that the island that has been formed there is in a critical condition that needs to be conserved, and hence the title of biodiversity heritage, which stands true to the fact that Majuli Island year after year is being drained away by river Brahmaputra, and there needs to be a conservation effort to preserve that island as well. Okay, so remember Aminpur Lake and Majuli Island that is there. Then with reference to Pongabia Lake recently seen in the news, consider the following statements. First, it is an oxbow lake formed by the erosional activity of river Ganga and river Son. Now, second is it is the first notified community reserve of Bihar. So this is correct. Now regarding the first statement, Pongabia Lake, where is it? It is situated in the northern reaches of Bihar, in the district of Katihar. There is where you have the formation of an oxbow lake, which is referred to as the Pongabia. Now, why do I say the name Katihar and why do I mention that it is found in the northern reaches of Bihar? Because if you have read, if you have come across the river systems and its tributaries, immediately you will be able to conclude that river Son originates near the Amarkantak hills, which are present in central India, and joins river Ganga from the south. So there is no way that river Son can form an oxbow lake in the northern part of Bihar because it joins river Ganga from the south. So that is why it will be an incorrect statement. Which is the river which rather forms this oxbow lake kind of pattern? So along with river Ganga, there is another important river which flows through the eastern part of Bihar, forming the natural boundary between Bihar and West Bengal for a long distance that is there. And that river is the river Mahananda. It is due to the impact of river Mahananda and river Ganga that you get Pongabia Lake. Okay, so that is how by each statement, examining the statement carefully and recalling all the concepts that we have studied, we can very easily conclude what our answer is going to be, or we can decipher our answer very comfortably. Now, river Mahananda is in news this year for something else as well. What is that? That is basically regarding the river interlinking project that the government of India is launching in a phased manner in different parts of the country. So thereby, in the state of Bihar, an in-principle approval has been granted for Kosi-Mechi interlinking. Kosi-Mechi interlinking or river interlinking project that has been given in principle approval by the government this year, or rather the previous year itself, later part of the previous year itself. So Kosi-Mechi interlinking that is there, Mechi is nothing but a tributary of river Mahananda. So when we are talking about interlinking of the rivers, the plan is afoot to transfer excess amount of water from the river Kosi into the basin area of river Mahananda so as to bring the northeastern part of Bihar, which has been deprived from the light of development for much part of the year, for the generation that is there, those areas they get water. So that is why river Mahananda is important, and this time you can expect a question in geography as well regarding river Mahananda. So for that you need to know that it forms a natural boundary between the state of Bihar and West Bengal for some part that is there. It is that river which eventually joins river Ganga, so is a kind of a tributary. Then another important aspect is that it is one of those rivers where interlinking of river project is being exercised. Okay, so that is how from one small question you can derive so many things which are important from exam perspective. Okay, then after that we come to Gangetic dolphins. So consider the following statements regarding the Gangetic river dolphin. First is, the Gangetic river dolphins can only live in fresh water. So that is as straightforward a statement as it can be, because here you have river and rivers have fresh water. So river dolphins will obviously be able to live in fresh water. Then it is placed under the vulnerable category by IUCN. So this statement is rather incorrect. It is rather placed in endangered category that is there. Then Vikramshila Gangetic Dolphin Sanctuary in Bihar is India's only sanctuary for this protection. So again this will be correct, leaving 1 and 3 as answer. The Vikramshila Gangetic Dolphin Sanctuary, which has actually been established in the region of Bhagalpur in Bihar, is the only area where Gangetic dolphin are sought to be protected. Okay, so when it comes to, and why is it that Gangetic dolphin has again become important in the past couple of years? That is because the government has been really acting upon its plan to connect inland waterways of our country. And river Ganga, rightly so, has been given National Waterway 1 prestige, or the allocation has been made accordingly. Now in that river you have these endangered species which rather rely on echolocations, not by visual sight. this is something you need to be clear. Gangetic dolphins or any river dolphins across the world that you come across, they always rely on echolocation, like a sonar that you will see. And they do not have very sharp eyes. So that is why through these echolocations, they are able to make out directions under the turbulent waters of rivers as well, riverbeds as well. When there are ships which are going to run on these waters, that will prove to be a hindrance for these dolphins. So that is why gangetic dolphins and the preservation of riverine dolphins has again become very important. Okay? Now, with reference to Indus River dolphins, consider the following statements. Now, earlier we saw gangetic dolphins, here we say Indus River dolphins. So again, before proceeding, let me say that riverine dolphins, they are not only restricted to River Ganga. They are actually, and they can be found in different areas across the world. So, and they are named accordingly. So, in certain areas, like suppose the Gangetic River dolphin that is there, okay, they are named accordingly. So, the dolphins who are found in River Ganga, they are named by a typical name that is Susu. Why so? That is because of the sound that they make while they are breathing. Okay, then the Indus Gangetic dolphin, that is what is also referred to as Bhulan. Okay, then the river dolphin that you have in China across the river Yangtze, that is referred to as Baiji. Okay, and then you have another breed or another type of river dolphin which is found in the waters of river Amazon. That is referred to as Boto. So just look at the different names that riverine dolphins have across the world. So that tells you it is not something which is endemic only to India, but rather can be found in freshwater ecosystems across the world. Okay? And remember these names if you can, because it is expected for the past couple of years that UPSC is going to ask a matching type of question regarding which species of gangetic dolphin or which species of riverine dolphin is found in which area that is there. So that is why I would recommend you at least have a primary idea about which kind of dolphin is found in which river waters that are there. Okay? Now, let us look at the question that is there. Okay? So, presently, they are found only in the river Satluj. This is regarding to Indus River dolphin. So presently they are found only in river Satluj. That is incorrect. They are not found in river Satluj. Rather, in case of the whole of the tributaries of river Indus that you have in India, Indus River dolphin can only be found in river Beas. Okay? River Beas, again, from a geographical standpoint is important. Why? It is one of those rivers which flow only within the purview of Indian territory that is there. Okay? Then, the Punjab government has designated it as a state aquatic animal. True. Then the third is, it uses echolocation to navigate, communicate and hunt prey in the muddy river waters. Again, that is true. So the answer shall be 2 and 3. So hereby what we have seen, that echolocation is something which is going to be common across different species regardless of which river they are found in, but then their numbers is actually decreasing day by day because of damages done by the fishing activities which are carried in river basins. Okay? Now, consider the following pairs when it comes to the animals and the region where they are found. So the first is regarding hangul, and it is found in Jammu and Kashmir. Hangul is true. That is correct. Now, hangul is actually one of the animals which is critically endangered. So before moving forward, let us know about Hangul. Hangul is also referred to as the Kashmiri stag that is there. Now its population has been declining very sharply in the past few decades. So there have been various different contributing factors to the declining population of Hangul. Now, we'll come to the artificial or anthropogenic factors, but there are also natural factors at play. And one of the natural factors which is ensuring that the Hangul population stays on the decline is actually the poor male to female ratio. Poor male to female ratio. This poor male to female ratio that persists, that is not, let's say, naturally favorable for increase in the number or the increase in population of that species. So that is why Hangul species or the population has to be taken care of, because naturally they are not favorable for a natural exponential growth. Other than that, there are anthropogenic factors as well. What are the anthropogenic factors? So this is an area which is rather one of the most conflict-ridden areas on the planet. So time and again there is movement of men, material, arms and armaments from one area to another. That includes restriction of the areas or habitats which Hangul pride as their own. So that drives the Hangul population into the central parts of towns, of villages, again increasing the man-animal conflict, leading to a decline in population. Okay, so Hangul in case of Jammu and Kashmir is correct. Then you have the lion-tailed macaque. Now lion-tailed macaque is a very special type of monkeys, or rather those arboreal species that you will find especially in the region of Western Ghats. So this is incorrect. Okay, it is found specially in the regions of Western Ghat that is there. And then you have the wild buffaloes. So wild buffaloes, yes, they can be found in the region of Assam, which makes this correct. So the answer will be 1 and 3. Now, lion-tailed macaque. Why is that important? This is a species which is important in order to upkeep the health, so to say, of the forest ecosystem. How? These species, along with the hoolock gibbon, they are responsible for plucking maximum amount of flowering fruits and plants in these forests and spreading their seeds across the forest, helping the plants to germinate in larger numbers in more distributed pattern, and thereby helping the forest to stay evergreen in character and ensuring a diversity in plant species. So that is how you have different monkeys who are responsible for keeping or upkeeping the health of forest ecosystem as well. Keep that in mind. Okay. Then after that we have the Assam roofed turtle. So with reference to the Assam roofed turtle recently seen in news, which of the following statements are correct? First, this species is primarily found in Assam and Bangladesh. Well, the name is Assam roofed turtle, so yes, this is a correct statement. Then it is listed as vulnerable in the IUCN red list. This is rather incorrect. It is mentioned as endangered. Then the species inhabits in freshwater ecosystem, again, which is very true. Look at this. This is the Assam roofed turtle. The name has been ascribed after the protective shell that it has. So this species inhabits in freshwater ecosystem, be it the riverines or the rivers that are there, small streams that flow. In all these areas, you tend to find these type of turtles, which are very small, mind you. It will be the size of your palm, or it can easily fit in the size of the palm, but it is endangered nonetheless. So here you have C, that is 1 and 3 as the correct answer. Then we come to pangolins. Pangolins this year is very important. Why? because of being the obvious suspect who have actually put the world in such a quagmire where we are suffering from coronavirus. So pangolins are one of those suspected sources. I'm still saying suspected sources. So that makes pangolin and their status, their properties, their phenomena very important this year. So rest assured, I can categorically guarantee that UPSC is not going to ask you whether pangolins were responsible for coronavirus or not, but they can definitely ask you questions regarding what their life cycle is about, regarding what their status is. So, first, they improve nutrient quality of soil. So, this is rather correct. We'll look at it how. Then, these are endemic to Nilgiri mountains of India. Means they can be found in only those areas. So, this is rather incorrect. Pangolins are found in many regions of India. They are also what are referred to as ant-eaters. They are also referred to as ant-eaters. Then, this species is listed in Appendix 1 of CITES. Appendix 1 means maximum conservation. So, that shall again be correct. You have the answer as 1 and 3 only. Now, let us discuss about the ant-eaters and how they improve the nutrient quality of the soil. I'll give you a hint. How they help the soil is the similar way in how earthworms actually increase the aeration of soil or available air and oxygen quantity in the soil. So that is because of the fact that these animals, they have very sharp claws and they have a burrowing ability as well. They burrow into the soil in order to look for different ants and different termites which might be available. So while doing that, many of the times what they do is they simply upturn the soil profile in the upper layer, ensuring further mixing of these layers, and when mixing of layers happen, nutrient quality of soil will automatically improve. So that is one quality of pangolins which is very beneficial for the general biodiversity. Secondly, what you have to understand, these are the only mammals in which case the whole body is covered with protective layer of shells that are there. Now this protective casing is made up of keratin, which is a kind of protein which is available. Okay, it is this keratin why pangolins are being hunted down and why their numbers are declining, because this protective shell is used to make certain kind of traditional medicines in East Asian countries and more particularly in the country of China. Now, here we have seen that an animal is improving the nutrient quality of soil by providing it air. So on a related topic, which is the soil which ensures self-aeration in order to ensure air that reaches the different depths of that soil? This is important from geography perspective. So black soil is the one which does not need any animal interference, rather that is a soil which ensures self-aeration and self-plowing abilities. Okay? Another trivia which was important from prelims perspective. Now, regarding vermins. Remember, vermins are the ones, or these are those category of animals which can be hunted down because they end up creating a nuisance in human inhabited area or in agricultural area because of their sheer size and their sheer population that is there. So vermins, as I said, they are mentioned under Schedule 5. Okay, remember this. They are mentioned under Schedule 5 of Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Schedule 6 is also important because that includes the list of different plants which need to be protected as well. Okay, keep that in mind. Now, with reference to vermins declared under the Wildlife Protection Act, which of the following statements are correct? First, once declared a vermin, they remain in that category for 1 year. 1 year. So whenever you come across statements like this, immediately examine this statement on the crucible of logic, whether it is logical or not. So in this case, the category will remain for 1 year, regardless of their population, regardless whether they have moved from that area or not. So that is what makes this statement incorrect. What actually happens is, once an animal is declared a vermin, there is a specified time which is mentioned there in that declaration itself. It is not fixed regarding 3 months, 6 months, 6 weeks, 4 weeks or 1 year. It can be decided accordingly, according to the problem which is posed by those animals. Then, the chief wildlife warden of a state can declare an animal as a vermin if it poses a danger to human life or property. Now, again, this is incorrect. Why? Because we discussed that the state government basically forwards the list of those animals which it desires to be declared as vermin to the central government. Only after the central government has accepted, and thereby that is when the central government declares a particular animal to be treated as a vermin. So that is why this is the statement which is incorrect. Then the third is, rhesus macaque monkeys, which Hindus regard as sacred, are declared as vermin in Himachal Pradesh. That is true, because of the nuisance that they created. Also, there were different animals under consideration. Even nilgai was under consideration to be declared a vermin in certain states. That is because in certain states, these particular animals, they can cause a lot of devastation to the agricultural crop, to the fruits and the trees that can be found there. Okay, so vermin is important, and the conditions regarding vermin is also important. Now, we come to the only species of ape which is actually found in the Indian subcontinent, that is hoolock gibbon. Now, I said why hoolock gibbon is important. Hoolock gibbon along with lion-tailed macaque are the ones who ensure that there is a resurgence or a regrowth of the forest ecosystem which takes place in a balanced and a well-distributed manner. So, it is the only ape species found in India? Absolutely true. It has 2 subspecies and both are listed as endangered in IUCN red list. This is incorrect. It has 2 subspecies. One is referred to as the western, which is rather endangered, and the other is the eastern, which is vulnerable. So eastern is found in slight numbers in the northeastern parts of India and also in the Yunnan province of China, the one which is bordering our northeastern part, and the Myanmar region. So in those areas, in Indo-Burma biodiversity hotspot that we discussed, in that area you find the eastern variety or the eastern subspecies which is vulnerable. So this will be incorrect. Then this species is an example of arboreal adaptation. What is arboreal adaptation? So this is a kind of adaptation whereby the different animals, they travel through the trees, leaves and branches, and thereby they end up covering large distances in order to remain at the top, and in order to not able to, or rather than in order to prevent themselves the need to go on the floor of the forest. Why? Because these monkeys, they live in dense forest, evergreen kind of forest. And in those forests, on the floor of the forest, on the ground surface, there are enough dangers already. So that is why these kind of species, they undergo an adaptation which is referred to as arboreal adaptation, whereby they can spend their life living on the trees, living on the branches, and living off the fruits that are given by these trees. So that is again something which will be correct, and again you have C, 1 and 3 as correct. Okay, remember this is the only species of ape that you will come across in our country. Now, with reference to the Antarctic krill, consider the following statements. These are phytoplanktons found in cold oceans that are there. This will be incorrect. Okay, because look at this. This is the krill that is there. Phytoplanktons rather produce food with the help of or due to the procedure of photosynthesis. So melting ice shelves are leading to an increase in their population. Again, incorrect, because melting ice is leading to a decrease in the krill population, which is also indirectly affecting the population of the humpback and the blue whales as larger animals. Then, they sequester carbon dioxide through photosynthesis. If they are not phytoplanktons, how will they undertake photosynthesis? So again, this will be an incorrect statement. Here, you have to find out statements which are incorrect, and that will be D, that is 1, 2, and 3. Antarctic krill is very important because it is one of those species on which the whole of the oceanic food web depends upon. It is this krill which ensures that there is enough supply of food to the different animals which prevail in the oceanic water body, and their decline in population will lead to a decline in population of the larger animals as well. Okay? Now, there are few other protected areas which have been in news this year as well. So, just go through these protected areas as well. What are those? First of all, Amrabad Tiger Reserve in Telangana. So, it is rather the largest tiger reserve you have in India. Right? Now, earlier, it was the part of Nagarjuna Srisailam Tiger Reserve or NSTR Tiger Reserve that you find in Andhra Pradesh. After the bifurcation of the state, it was Amrabad Tiger Reserve, which was named accordingly and is an important habitat for the tigers. What else is important here? Here, this is an area which is inhabited by the Chenchus, which are again a PVTG, or particularly vulnerable tribal groups that are there. So, this is an area which is inhabited by them. What else is important regarding this? Another factor which is important is that here you will also experience, or rather here a strange phenomena was experienced way back in 2017 when an endangered species was introduced here, and that was the endangered species of mouse deer that had been introduced in Amrabad Tiger Reserve. So these are the important factors which make Amrabad Tiger Reserve important. Then you have Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve. Why has this been in news? That is because recently a large pack, or rather a large congregation of elephants was noticed here for the first time. So that is why it is in news. But why is Bandhavgarh important? That is because Bandhavgarh is among the only few areas in our country which form the natural habitat for white tigers. For white tigers. That is why Bandhavgarh is so important in the ecological map that is there. Okay? Then, Namdapha National Park. I have already discussed that this is one national park where you will end up finding all 4 subspecies of the big cats that are there. So you will end up finding snow leopard, clouded leopard, general leopard, as well as tiger. Also, this is quite large an area, and rather the largest area, protected area in the northeast that you will come across. Along with that fact, here you will also find the Namdapha flying squirrel that is there. Okay. Then you have the Bandipur Tiger Reserve. Here, the population of tigers is actually the second highest across the country, and this is important because it is surrounded from all sides by tiger reserves as well, that is Nagarhole, Mudumalai as well as Wayanad, making it one of the very important transit areas for the wildlife movement or the tiger movement that is there. Okay. Then you have the Mahadai Wildlife Sanctuary. It is situated in the Western Ghats near the state of Goa. Why it is important? Because this year there has been a request which has been filed to convert some part of it into a tiger reserve. And also this is inhabited by a tribal community referred to as the Dhangars, who have been provided ST status by the state of Maharashtra as well. So that is why Mahadai Wildlife Sanctuary is also important. Okay. Then after that we come to biosphere reserves. So biosphere reserves, an initiative, was launched way back in the 70s itself. And thereby different areas were established for conservation purpose of not only flora, not only fauna, but of the entire biodiversity and the entire landscape. Now hereby, there is also an international initiative which is run in order to identify certain areas which are critical for preservation of biodiversity, so that more awareness can be raised, so that more level of protection can be undertaken. So that is why you will see that India has a host of around 18 different biosphere reserves. Out of that, you will find 11 of them are underlined. These are rather a part of Man and Biosphere Reserve Initiative and Man and Biosphere Initiative, which has been launched for the identification of these areas. So these areas that you come across, at least the underlined ones, these are the important ones, whereby you need to know where they are. You need to know their location, north to south, east to west. Because in prelims, you can expect a question regarding the locational chronological order in which these need to be arranged significantly. Okay. Now, another important thing that you need to remember in case of biodiversity, biosphere reserves is, this is one of those protected areas which have 3 layers of protection, whereby initially you have the core zone, then you have the buffer zone, and eventually you have the transition zone. So in this sort of protection and in this sort of protected area, the role of the local community is sought to be paramount, because only when their interest is at stake, only then can the biodiversity be protected. And with that ideology, the biodiversity is protected in the case of biodiversity reserves. Okay. Then here you find a list of areas which have been given or which have been granted as MIKI sites in India. What is MIKI? It is monitoring the illegal killing of elephants. So it is a program which has been launched under the purview of CITES. That is Convention on Illegal Trade for Endangered Species. CITES is important. Why? First of all, because it is legally binding. Right? It is legally binding. It is also known as the Washington Convention. Okay, so remember these trivia regarding CITES, and these are the important reserve areas for elephant conservation which have been declared under the CITES leadership and under the program initiated by CITES, and that program is MIKI program, or monitoring the illegal killing of elephants. Now in most of these you will see that these are the areas which have also been included under biodiversity reserves or national parks that are there. Okay. Now here One very strange name that you will find is Eastern Dwarfs Elephant Reserve. What are Eastern Dwarf Elephant Reserves? Or what are dwarfs? So what are dwarfs? These are, mind you, geographical landforms which are kind of longitudinal valleys, which are known as dunes in the case of Western Himalayas and known as dwarfs in the case of Eastern Himalayas. So keep your mind open regarding these names. That will automatically help you understand a lot and recall much more. Okay? At the end, there are certain species of butterflies which have been accepted by the different states as their state butterfly. The latest on that name is Tamil Yeoman, that is there. That has been accepted by Tamil Nadu as the state butterfly. So remember this, and these will be, again, might be important from the exam perspective. So here you find a consolidated list, and here you find a list regarding all the important national parks across the country. Out of the different states, Madhya Pradesh actually has the largest number of national parks, which account for 10 in number. Okay? So that shall be all regarding the protected areas, regarding the protected species. What I would recommend you to do is, please go through the questions, extract as much as possible from these questions, which shall in a way save your time, which would have either ways been expended in reading those voluminous books and details. So go through these questions. In the previous 4 lectures that we have conducted on environment and ecology, we have covered close to around 68 to 69 different topics and different concepts via the medium of explanation and via the medium of different questions. Not to brag that this is where you will find most of your questions from, but then we can say with a certain degree of certainty that at least if you are thorough with this portion, your static as well as your dynamic portion shall be well taken care of, and more than 50% of the questions from environment and ecology in the examination you shall be able to deal very easily, very nicely, and very comfortably. Okay, so that shall basically finish the module for environment and ecology that you have. Tomorrow we are going to have a session for government schemes. Again, that is important for you guys, where you will find a consolidated module for all the different government schemes which have been important for this present year. Okay, so that shall be all from my side. Please like the video if you like it, comment and subscribe the video, and write about how you feel about the whole lecture series that have been launched by us and whether it is helpful to you guys or not. And please don't forget to press the bell icon so that you are notified immediately when we come up with a new lecture. Okay, so that shall be all from my side. Again, at the end, all the best wishes for your examination. Be at your alert best, but also just take it as another examination that will ensure that you succeed in it. Okay, that shall be all.